My hands trembled on the cracked vinyl steering wheel, and I knew it wasn't just the withdrawal shaking me up this time. 3 days clean, and it felt like my body wanted to unravel from the inside, every nerve on fire. The dashboard clock glowed its sickly green light over my knuckles. 3:47 a.m. Somewhere out in the endless, dark stretch of the Nevada desert, that same black SUV was still behind me. Quiet, steady, relentless. I'd caught flashes of it over the last 60 miles, smooth as a shadow, always keeping just enough distance to be unnerving. That told me it was no amateur. The Vipers didn't need to be loud or flashy. They knew I was cornered. You don't just vanish when you owe 50 grand. Especially not when the person waiting on the payment is Tommy Rohr, a man not known for second chances, particularly not after what happened to his younger brother Marcus. Marcus, the 23-year-old bass player with a future brighter than any of us. Until that night on Highway 50 changed everything. The memory hit like it always did, fast and cruel. Marcus's riffs still echoed in my head, tangled with the noise of skidding tires and crushing steel. I could still see his face, eyes wide, that frozen second before impact. In the quiet moments, it was like I could still hear him playing. The kid had a gift, real talent, more than I'd ever had, even in my best days. But talent means nothing when you're gone too soon because someone else made the wrong call. My throat burned with every breath. My voice, once my strength, now came out like shattered gravel. Doctors had warned the damage might not heal. Vocal trauma, they'd said. Cold, clinical words that didn't make it any less brutal. Some days the sound wouldn't come at all. Another broken piece of a life I'd managed to wreck beyond recognition. The CB crackled, voices of distant truckers rising from the static, like echoes of ghosts. I reached for my coffee cup with a shaky hand. Empty again. That made 5 since Reno. My nerves screamed for caffeine, my body begged for rest. But sleep wasn't an option. Not with withdrawal clawing at my mind and danger, pacing just behind me. The lawsuits had stripped me bare. The house in Carson City where I'd written my best songs, gone. The '67 Mustang my dad left me, gone. Even my Martin guitar, bought with my first real check, sold to cover legal costs and settlements that wouldn't undo the loss of 3 young lives that had once trusted me. All I had left was this battered Peterbilt and one last shot at making enough to buy time. Maybe even convince Tommy to ease off. The radio hissed and jolted me so bad I nearly veered off the road. Northbound on I-80. This is dispatch. Come. In, Silas. I grabbed the mic with shaking fingers, pressed the button, and tried to speak. Yeah, I'm here, Donna. What's the word? Bad news, hun. Avalanche took out part of Donner Pass about 2 hours ago. Guardrails gone, both lanes blocked. Caltrans says no eastbound movement until at least noon. Could be longer, weather depending. My gut dropped like a brick. Noon was too late. The Vipers had given me 72 hours. I was already cutting it close. This Vegas run, 25 grand in cash, no questions, was my last shot. Enough to stall the worst of Tommy's wrath. Any other routes? I asked, though I already knew. Highway 50's your best bet, but you're looking at 8 extra hours, maybe more with the snow. Thanks, Donna. 8 hours might as well have been 8 years. I set the handset down and stared ahead at the snowy highway. Flakes spun in the headlights like confused insects, and the gas gauge wasn't looking friendly either. That's when I remembered something Jake Morrison told me a few weeks back at the Reno truck stop, when he'd had a few too many. Jake had been running these roads since forever. He grabbed my wrist like a vice, his eyes full of something heavier than liquor. There's another road, he'd whispered, reeking of bourbon and regret. Old Silt Highway. Folks forgot it even exists. Been closed since the '70s. But it's there, if you know where to look. Cuts off a few hours if you've got the nerve. I'd laughed then. Thought he was just weaving ghost stories like old drivers do. Come on, Jake. That road's a myth. But his grip tightened. It's real, son. The question is, are you desperate enough to take it? 'Cause that road don't follow the rules, eats trucks, spits out ghosts. Now, idling on a snowy road with nowhere left to turn, Jake's warning didn't sound so crazy, to maybe a quarter-mile in the reach of my headlights. In ordinary circumstances, I would have pulled over and waited for visibility to improve. But ordinary had stopped applying the night I climbed behind the wheel drunk with 3 bandmates, who trusted me to get them home alive. 25 minutes later, I found it. The rock slide was exactly how the forum threads had described it. Too well aligned to be natural. Giant stones, stacked like someone was trying to hide something rather than block a road. Between the uneven gaps in the debris, I could see a tunnel entrance, just wide enough for a semi if the driver didn't care about scraping the paint off both sides. I sat there with the engine idling, the wind howling through the cracked seals of the cab, snow quietly blanketing the windshield. This was madness. I was about to enter a sealed tunnel, sealed for a reason. I was chasing internet rumors and truck stop legends because I was too proud and too afraid to face the fallout of my own choices. But the alternative was worse. The alternative was Tommy Rohr and whatever retribution he'd dreamed up for the guy who killed his kid brother. I'd heard stories about people who owed the Viper crew money, stories that made regular debt collectors look like charity workers. I shifted into gear and aimed the truck at the tight space between the boulders. The moment I moved forward, metal scraped against stone, a shrill, grinding scream that hit a nerve deep in my spine. For a terrifying second, I thought I'd misjudged it. That the trailer would jam, that I'd be stuck, unable to reverse, waiting helplessly while the Vipers decided how to make me disappear. But then, with a final groan, the trailer cleared. I was through. The headlights sliced into pitch blackness that swallowed the beams like black water. The shift was instant and deeply wrong. The desert heat, which had seeped through the windows despite the storm outside, vanished. In its place, a cold that sank into my bones and made my breath fog up, my hands blanch where they clutched the wheel. The sky vanished. Where stars should have been, nothing. As if someone draped a curtain over the world. My GPS flickered, then died. The CB radio burst into static. And then something worse. A low, guttural growl that seemed to rise from the very road beneath me. But it was the highway surface that made my skin crawl. It was wrong. Too dark, like dried blood, with an oily, organic sheen that reminded me of tar pits and the ancient beasts that died in them. Twisted trees pressed close from both sides of the road. Skeletal branches scratching against the trailer with the sound of nails on coffin lids. And beneath it all, rising up through the floor of the cab and into my chest, was a resonance. Not quite a sound, not quite a feeling. A deep vibration, a hum, alive, like the purring of some massive predator, just waiting. I tried to rationalize. It's just road noise, I told myself. Just weird tunnel acoustics, just withdrawal playing tricks on me. But I'd lived through 4 decades of hard living, and every instinct screamed one thing. I was not alone. I was being watched. I was being hunted. The steering wheel began to fight me, pulling subtly but firmly. The truck wasn't responding to me anymore. Something else was guiding it. The tires gripped the surface like the road itself wanted to decide my direction. My high-powered headlights, capable of slicing through desert blackness, could barely push back this night. It pressed against the windshield like wet velvet, thick and suffocating. I wasn't driving. I was being drawn in. The hum beneath me intensified, rising through the seat, through my spine. That same low purr of some unseen thing that knew it had me. The skeletal trees crept even closer, branches clawing at the trailer, making sounds that made my teeth ache. Maybe 10 minutes passed. Maybe less. Time didn't behave right here. It stretched and twisted. That's when I saw something in the mirror. At first, I assumed it was just flickering shadows from the branches. Hallucinations, exhaustion, withdrawal. But then I saw it. My blood turned to ice. A dark shape was oozing out from the tree line, flowing like oil across the glistening black road. It moved like liquid shadow, and then it began to take form. It solidified into something dog-sized, but not dog-shaped. Its movements were too fluid, too precise. It kept pace with the truck without effort, gliding across terrain that should have. They moved with slow, measured precision. Whatever they had taken from me had satisfied them for now. Their pace eased, their movements less frantic, but they were still watching, still waiting for more. I tried to reason through it all, to latch onto anything that could explain the madness. Altitude sickness, maybe carbon monoxide from a busted exhaust. But deep in the pit of my stomach, in that primal place that always knew when to run, I understood the truth. This road was alive. It was thinking. And it was consuming me one piece at a time. Losing my voice had just been the opening act. My fingers trembled against the wheel as I kept moving forward into darkness that had no business existing. The hum had changed too. It wasn't just around me anymore. It was inside me, like it had tuned itself to something in my chest. That sound. It now owned a part of me. Every so often, I caught myself trying to hum along. My vocal cords wouldn't cooperate, of course, but the instinct was still there. Disturbing and alien, like the road was trying to tune my brain to its own terrible frequency. Even the road under my tires felt off now. It didn't feel like pavement anymore. It felt alive, organic, and it gripped the wheels with deliberate intent, steering me along curves I hadn't chosen, through bends I didn't see coming, deeper and deeper into a forest of skeleton trees. I tried to brake. The truck barely responded. I nudged toward what looked like a shoulder. The wheel resisted me, twisting under my hands like it had a will of its own. I wasn't driving. I was cargo. The road was in control. When I caught glimpses of the mile markers, they made no sense. Mile 13, then 15, then suddenly 11. They came and went like hallucinations, just more confirmation of what I'd already felt. This road didn't follow rules. It was a maze, a trap designed to disorient, to confuse, to break down its victims until they were too lost to fight back. The fuel gauge dipped faster than it should have, the needle sliding toward empty, faster and faster with each turn. My engine temp rose steadily, even though the cab felt like a freezer. It was as if the road was draining the truck along with me, feeding on gas, coolant, whatever it needed to keep itself alive. I passed the same twisted tree over and over again, lightning-scarred and hunched, its branches like hands reaching across the road. The first time I saw it, I felt panic. The third time, terror. I was stuck, caught in a loop, digested. The hounds kept pace with surgical precision, never faltering, their ember eyes locked on me. They weren't chasing me anymore. They were guiding me, driving me like sheepdogs herding prey towards slaughter. The CB radio hissed and died. The dash lights dimmed to a dull flicker. Even my truck, the old friend that had carried me across deserts and mountains, was being hollowed out. And still, the hum remained, louder, deeper. It was more than sound now. It pulsed in my bones, made my teeth ache. The worst part? It was starting to feel comforting, like a lullaby from something vast and ancient, something that wanted me calm before it devoured me. I felt myself giving in, letting it in, allowing that rhythm to carry me. I was exhausted. Withdrawal burned every nerve. My throat was raw, stolen, my mind shattered from revisiting the worst night of my life. Surrender would be so easy. Just stop fighting. Let it take me. No more pain, no more guilt, no more fear. They moved with eerie precision, swaying like serpents tasting the air, intelligent and aware. Where they touched the pavement, the asphalt sizzled and smoked, dissolving under their corrosive presence. These weren't simple shadows. They were limbs, feelers, of something colossal and utterly alien. The tendrils weren't the whole creature. They were just the smallest part that I was allowed to see. I slammed the brakes with both feet, desperate for control. The truck barely slowed. I wasn't in charge anymore. The road had full control, pulling me forward no matter what I did. The hounds shifted formation, abandoning their flanks and flowing ahead like liquid. They created a living wall across the road, blocking any last hope of escape. Behind me, the path I'd just driven was closing. Fresh blacktop bubbling up from the ground like tar, sealing off retreat. The hum crescendoed into a roar, deafening and violent. It didn't just fill the air, it filled me. My teeth felt loose in my gums. My skull vibrated. Something warm ran from my ears. Blood, maybe. But I knew it wasn't just sound. It was a voice, a language, something speaking to me, old, immense, and completely incomprehensible. Then the tendrils struck. 3 of them. They punched through the truck's air vents like spears, fast enough to blur. The vents tore open like paper. The cab filled with writhing shadow. Where the tendrils touched, frost exploded outward, spreading across surfaces in sharp, jagged patterns that looked unnatural, beautiful and painful. The temperature inside, the cab plunged instantly. My breath fogged thick. Frost crept over the dashboard, the cold bit deeper than any winter I'd known. My hands, still clutching the wheel, went numb. My feet, braced against the brake, lost all feeling. But the worst came when one tendril wrapped around my left arm. Pain hit like a lightning bolt. Agony shot from elbow to shoulder. A freezing, searing burn as if I were being dipped in liquid. Nitrogen while someone electrocuted the same limb. I tried to scream, but of course nothing came. The road had already stolen my voice. All I could do was shake silently, mouth open, eyes wide, as the tendril dug deeper, not for flesh, but for something more important. A message formed on the frost-covered windshield, etched by invisible force. Forget their touch. Pay. And suddenly I wasn't in the truck anymore. I was back there. In that one moment, the last one that ever truly mattered. Marcus was laughing at something Jake had said, his fingers walking across the bass strings. Sarah was tuning her Strat, humming softly to herself. We were in the green room at O'Malley's, and it smelled like smoke and nerves and cheap beer. Sarah touched my shoulder, calloused fingertips warm even through my thin shirt. You ready for this, Silas? She smiled. This crowd's going to eat it up. Marcus bumped fists with me, that grin lighting up his face like it always did. Best band in Carson City, he said. We're going to crush it tonight. Jake gave a steady nod from behind, his kit, our anchor, our heartbeat. For a moment, it was all real again. I could smell Sarah's perfume. I could feel her hand. I could hear our laughter and believe, just for a second, that we were going to make it. This was the moment I lost. Not just 3 musicians, but them, my family. The last people who ever touched me without judgment or pity. Then it all shattered. The tendrils yanked the memory away like pages from a diary, leaving me with a hollow shell. I still remembered the events, but not the feeling. Sarah's touch, gone. Marcus's laugh, empty. Jake's steady nod, a fact without weight, like reading about strangers in a forgotten article. At the same time, the thug, who once threatened to slice me open if I didn't pay his debt, he'd never get the chance. If I gave up now, if I let this endless nightmare swallow me whole, no one would ever answer for what I'd done. No justice for the families I'd hurt. No redemption for me. My death would be quiet, hollow, another vanishing act on a road no map dared to show. The road curved again, And then, light, real light, broke through the gloom. Not the failing flicker of my dying headlights, but a warm yellow glow that whispered of humanity. As I rounded the bend, the sight hit me like a hallucination brought to life. A building. Real. Solid. The first sign of life I'd seen since this descent into hell began. A low-slung, battered structure made of warped planks and rusted tin, its neon sign blinking unevenly in the window. Elijah's Last Stand, it read. And beneath, in fading letters, cold beer. Hot food. The sign had seen better decades, but to me it was a lighthouse. A roadside tavern. A last hope. Maybe someone inside could tell me what this place was. Maybe they could even help. Or at the very least, witness whatever was left of me. The shadowhounds didn't follow me in. As the truck rolled into the gravel lot, they fanned out into a loose circle around the building. Their ember eyes burned steady in the dark, not attacking, not retreating, just waiting, watching, reminding me this wasn't salvation. It was just the next chapter. My truck gave out with a final sigh. The engine stuttered and died without me touching the key. The headlights blinked out, followed by the dash lights. I sat there, surrounded by darkness, except for the neon glow that bathed the bar's windows. And underneath it all, the hum. It was louder now. I could feel it crawling up from the ground, rattling through the chassis, vibrating into my bones. For a while, I just sat there, clutching my dead left hand, holding it close like a relic. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The bar looked normal. Parked trucks, light spilling from grimy windows, the smell of possibility. But I'd learned not to trust anything on this cursed road. Still, what else could I do? I opened the door with my working hand and stepped onto the gravel. It crunched beneath my boots. Real. Almost comforting. The air smelled like pine. And something else, something rancid and organic, like spoiled meat left to rot in the sun. The door was thick, wooden, reinforced with iron bands, built to hold something out. Or maybe keep it in. I shoved it open with my shoulder. The hinges groaned like an old man in pain, but the warmth that greeted me was almost heavenly. Heat and the scent of beer and smoke rushed over me, wrapping around my frozen skin. For just a second, I dared to believe. This place felt real, tangible, human. But then my eyes adjusted. The bar was full of people, at first glance anyway. They were scattered across tables and slouched at the bar, drinks in hand, cigarettes burning in long-forgotten ashtrays. Locals, truckers, the kind of folks you'd expect in a place like this. Only they weren't moving. Not a blink, not a breath, and then I saw the ice. Every patron was sealed in a coffin of crystal-clear frost, their bodies preserved in perfect stillness, their faces etched in terror. Eyes stretched wide, mouths frozen mid-scream, hands clawed in desperation as if they'd died trying to escape an invisible coffin. They were like grotesque art installations, frozen snapshots of agony. Behind the bar, but I managed to wrench it open with my elbow. The sleeper cab felt like a tomb as I crawled inside, my numb fingers fumbling for the case that held my father's guitar. When I found it and clicked open the latches, the familiar sight of the honey, sunburst finish nearly broke what was left of my resolve. This guitar had been my companion through 15 years of dingy clubs and demos that never got picked up. It had been there the night I met Marcus and Jake and Sarah, the night we decided to form a band and chase the impossible dream of making it big. Every song I'd written, every moment of meaning I'd ever found in music was tied to this instrument. But the alternative was worse than losing myself. It meant becoming a silent prisoner, frozen and aware, as others were dragged into the same nightmare. I carried the guitar back to the bar, the obsidian shard clenched in my lifeless left hand. The frozen patrons stared with hollow, knowing eyes as I laid the Gibson across the bar and raised the shard like a pick. "Play your final note," the voice commanded, and I knew what it meant. The shard came down like an executioner's blade, on my left pinky fingertip, the one I'd used for chords 1,000 times before. The strike shattered more than just bone. It shattered something internal, some bond between me and the music that had once defined my life. There was no blood. My fingertip dissolved into black frost that curled around the shard like smoke. The volcanic glass glowed with an eerie blue light, and I felt something essential torn from me. Not a memory this time, but the ability to feel music. Not play it. Feel it. The shadow hounds flowed into the room like smoke, merging with the pulsing obsidian. The glow intensified, and when it faded, the shard was gone. In its place, the tip of my finger was now smooth obsidian, pulsing like it had a heartbeat. The cold vanished. The hum dropped to a whisper. Around me, the frozen bodies began to crack and fall apart. Their prisons gone. They didn't wake. They'd been dead for years, but at least now they were at rest. I staggered outside to find my truck's engine humming, headlights glowing into the night. The road before me was just road again, ordinary, dull, blessedly normal. I saw dawn breaking on the horizon. The return to civilization was a blur. I made my delivery in Vegas just as the sun hit the hills, took my $25,000 in cash, and delivered it to the address Tommy Rohr had given. An envelope slipped into shadows in an empty warehouse. Just like that, the threat vanished. But I felt nothing. No peace, no satisfaction, no purpose. The passion that once lit me from the inside was gone, replaced by a hollow nothing. I quit trucking that very day, sold my rig, got a cheap place in Vegas with what was left. I found work tuning pianos at hotels and casinos. The job needed precision, not emotion. No one cared if I couldn't sing anymore. I could still adjust strings and hammers. The work was cold and mechanical, perfect for what I'd become. Weeks passed. I learned to live around the damage, managed with my dead hand and its cold, black fingertip. I stopped looking in mirrors. My reflection made my stomach turn. Sleep came in shreds, always interrupted by dreams of empty highways and that voice, always waiting. But music revealed the worst of it. I'd kept the Gibson, more out of habit than hope. Sometimes, just before sunrise, I'd try to play. My fingers still remembered the patterns. My hand could still move through the shapes. But the sounds were lifeless, mechanical, soulless, like a machine copying a human performance. The magic was gone. That spark, that fire, was dead. It had been taken from me the night I met that ancient thing beneath the forgotten road. I could still make music, but I could no longer feel it. I was a musician without soul, a songwriter without song. 3 months after the highway ordeal, I was tuning a grand piano in the empty theater at the Bellagio when I heard it again. The hum. At first I thought it was resonance from the strings, some leftover vibration. But it grew louder, clearer. It came from below, rising up through the floor, through the piano's frame, through my left hand, through the obsidian